into the Warchant.com report. I'm Jeff Cameron of ESPN Radio. To my left and to my right, two gentlemen that work for Warchant.com. Well, one that is the founder and administrator of Warchant.com. The other is just an editor. Ira Schoffel and Gene Williams. Welcome in. Florida State gets a home win, guys. How about it? All right. Florida State gets that win. It was in dramatic fashion, 27-24, but it's a win nonetheless. And now we'll move on and think about this Clemson game, which is 3:30 on Saturday on ESPN. Of course, this game on the road for the Noles. And so let's look at this game. Cam Akers, the star of the game, guys, really more than anything else, with 199 yards rushing. We knew he was a good player. We knew he was a great athlete. We've been waiting for him to put it all together. I like that Florida State focused on the run with him. That was the best thing to me that came out of this game. Gene, your thoughts? Did you learn anything new from this game?
Well, the one thing I think we learned was that the team didn't lay down. Let's face it, after that BC game, we all of us had a little bit of a fear. Are they just going to call it in for the rest of the season? Or are they just done? So they came out with a little what for, a little fight, and that was good to see. Now, they got the win. That's also good to see for FSU. But at the end of the day, the same problems that have plagued this team all year are still there. And the biggest thing to me is situationally, this team is pathetic. I mean, let's start out with 1 for 13 on third downs. And these weren't all third and longs. There's a lot of 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2. They could not pick it up for their life. I mean, I don't understand the 3rd and 2s going in the shotgun when you can't pass protect. What is that? You got a running back running for 200 yards, and you're going in the shotgun on 3rd and 2. It's baffling to me. Other side of the ball, you gave up 8 3rd and longs. 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, you're great. 3rd and 9, forget it. They're going to convert every time. That, to me, again, situationally, I don't understand this team. The one time they get in the red zone, of course, they kick the field goal. They love to do that. You get down to that 20, it's time to shut it down and get those 3 points. FSU ranks 127th in red zone converting touchdowns. That is not a good set. And again, the defense, let's face it, they folded down the stretch like they do every single game. They got saved by a missed field goal. They got saved. There was just enough time. The clock ran out, fortunately, for FSU, or Syracuse probably would have gone and won that game. So the same problems are still there, and I think they're going to be there all season.
It'd be hard to think otherwise at this point. The season's nearly over. Besides getting the win, did you find anything to latch on to there, Ira?
Well, after Gene's recap, I'm trying to remember, did they win?
Did they win the game?
They did win, okay.
They did win the game. Yeah.
No, I agree with him. There's a lot of the same things that have been reoccurring all season, and we expect to occur through the rest of the season. If there's any positives, I would say as the game went on, you saw them start to play with a little bit more energy. You saw the defense run off the field a few times with excitement after a third down stop, the few third down stops that they got. And then also, it had to have given them some confidence and kind of buoyed them a little bit. If nothing else, maybe just gave them a little bit of security that the season doesn't necessarily have to be a total disaster going forward. The Boston College game, you lose by 32 points. At that point, you can't be any lower than that. So the fact that they showed some resolve, got the win, I think it would give those guys a little bit of confidence going into, really the toughest game, the toughest opponent, the toughest venue they played all season.
I think just by virtue of what you two gentlemen had to say, it kind of summarizes the season as a whole and the profound disappointment. You look now, Florida State could end up, even though they got this win, with a losing record, could lose the bowl streak. I guess compared to expectations, this is as profound a disappointment as you could possibly see. And Jimbo Fisher hasn't always handled it real well. I guess you want to try to put a brave face on this. It's been extremely difficult to do.
Yeah, I mean, to give him a break a little bit, I mean, this is uncharted territory. Nobody expected this. This is the worst season for Florida State since '76, at least the worst start. I mean, I guess they could go on and theoretically finish 7-6. But so, I mean, you understand why he's going through this. He's never done it as a coach. It's never happened to FSU, at least not being preseason number 3 and having this kind of season. So, I mean, he's kind of feeling his way along. But, yeah, I don't think he's handled it really well. It goes back a couple weeks ago. He had the exchange with the unruly fan. You can't do that as a head football coach of a major program. Kind of some of the passive-aggressive stuff he's done with the media. He always talks about avoiding clutter with his players. What we write and what you talk about, Jeff, to him, that should be clutter. He should ignore that. That shouldn't have any effect on how he presents himself publicly. He needs to ignore those things. And I think the mixed messages, one time he's kind of lukewarm after the BC game, just kind of gives the standard stuff, and then he comes out all fiery when he talks to me, when he talks to you, and then he dials it back again. Fans are very angry about this situation. They should be. He needs to show a little bit of that frustration, a little bit of that fire, instead of giving the same coach wrote over and over and over again. So, yeah, there's definitely some things he can handle better, and hopefully he learns from it, because 2012 when he had the NC State game, he had that horrific press conference where he put it all in execution. He learned from that, so I'm hoping he'll learn from this as well and adapt.
Yeah, uncharted waters here. He's struggled at times with this. If you were his PR agent, I love to go the PR route, what would you advise him to do or stop doing?
I would stop doing some of the kind of picking little fights and little battles along the way. I would focus on it as much positives as you could and really, remind people. And I don't think he's done this enough. I would remind people what this offense has gone through. Losing DeAndre Francois, all the injuries they've had on offense, that wide receiver core. Now, people will sit back and look at the big picture and say, well, you didn't recruit well enough at quarterback. You didn't recruit well enough at wide receiver. Those ultimately are your problems. But I would focus more on some of those challenges and kind of trying to keep things positive and accentuate the positives. And when guys are doing things well, being negative and kind of complaining about the media, complaining about the support of the administration, complaining about fans, challenging fans to be loyal, all that stuff is not productive. It's not positive. I know you can't just be happy-go-lucky as you're losing and going through this type of season, but you have to find a way to be more positive because otherwise it looks like you're wilting kind of under the pressure.
Well, you all at once have to exude strength while also showing your true character and personality in these types of situations. And the inner turmoil has led to these moments, I think, of weakness where Jimbo Fisher has lashed out at the press, has said some things that he probably wishes he could have back. But I think it would be important, too, to admit that this season has been very difficult for he and his staff to stomach because fans want to feel like they're understood, that their plight and their frustrations are felt by the head coach. And for him to recognize that while also showing strength, it's possible. You can do that, but you don't do it by talking about facilities and the need to add more things as if that's the reason you're not winning games, and you don't do it by taking issue with a question or something that's written. You do it by admitting this has been a disappointment for us all. I promise you we're going to get it fixed. Believe me, nobody's working harder than I am to be sure that this never happens again. These are the things, these are the talking points people expect to hear in moments of crisis.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I would equate it to as a business. If you're in a business or a political realm or whatever it is, there are times of crisis, and leadership in crisis is very difficult, but the great ones do it. And the people that are making $5 or $6 million, that's part of the job. And he has not dealt with this in the past, but he's got to learn how to do it quickly.
Is it also because he doesn't have somebody there really to advise him on this? I mean, the late Monk Bonasorte, I think, was good for him a little bit because it was a football guy he respected, and I think he had a little bit of sense how to work things politically. I don't think there's anybody really he can lean on right now to guide him through this whole trial and tribulation.
I think it's a very good point, and rest in peace, Monk Bonasorte. I think it was more than a little bit, Gene. I think it was a big, big deal to have Monk there because he could vent, and Monk could handle it and didn't take it personal. Monk, as you said, understood both the administrative side, but also, of course, the player side, the coach's side. So he was a nice balance, and he was able to go in and say, now, Jimbo, you can't do that. And then he could go back to the administration and say, well, listen, we really need to do this for the coach, and here's why. He doesn't have that right now, we don't think, and it's awfully tough to replace that. And, of course, there's nothing you can do when somebody, unfortunately and untimely, passes away. But it has led to a nightmarish situation here at Florida State, and things could get even worse because coming up next, it's Clemson, a team we'll preview who's been very, very good. Winners of, 45 of their last 49 games and 2 straight over Florida State. That's next on the Warchant.com report. Welcome back to the Warchant.com report. Let's take a look now at Clemson, who did stumble once along the way against the team that Florida State actually just vanquished, and that was Syracuse. But since then, Kelly Bryant has come back from his injury. He was hurt in that game and has played well. If you look at this, Clemson just running the football, you guys, they've got 4 different guys now with over 200-plus yards rushing, so there's some balance there. Their quarterback really runs it well. He's got nearly 700 yards rushing. I guess let's discuss the passing attack as well, though. He's got talented receivers to look at, and Clemson's very talented across the board, whether it's the passing game or the run game.
Yeah, and that's really their depth at wide receiver is impressive, and just skill players in general. You mentioned they've got several running backs they can use, a quarterback and run, and then at receiver they've got 3 receivers with I think 40 catches or so. They really spread the ball around. They have a bunch of different guys. There's not one guy that you say, okay, you've got to stop Sammy Watkins so to speak. It's a wide variety of options. He's going to get the ball out of his hands quickly. And it's I think it's going to be a big test for this Florida State defense because FSU will play a lot of nickel, will play a lot of dime, but they are not very good in coverage. They have not been good in coverage all year. They give big gaps. They don't make good plays on the ball. This is not a defense that turns the ball over very often. So I just think you're going to see a lot of nickeling and diming. This is not a Clemson offense that's going to put up 600 or 700 yards, you wouldn't think, and 50 points. But they'll move the ball. They're efficient, and they've got some guys who can make plays.
Deion Kane, Hunter Renfrow, amongst others. Who are we looking at in the run game? Like I said, they've got a lot of guys they hand the ball to. Their quarterback runs the ball exceptionally well also.
It's funny, Ira mentioned the wide receiver depth. I just don't know what that is. That's just kind of funny to hear that over there. But no, this is the thing. They're pretty good. Bryant's a good passer, not a great passer, I think, but they butter their bread completely on the running game. As Jeff meant, there's a lot of guys in the holster to go out there and do it. There's 3 top running backs, Etienne, Feaster, and then Kelly have combined for over 1,300 rushing yards, 17 touchdowns between them. This is their forte, and this is how they're going to go ahead and push teams against their defense. They averaged over 220 yards a game rushing the football against a very good NC State defense. Last week they ran for 224 yards. So that's clicking right now for them. Now one game they did lose, 113 rushing yards against Syracuse. So if you can hold them down against the rush, you got a chance to compete. So I think that's a huge factor for Florida State in this thing. And again, I wouldn't worry too much about Bryant passing the football. If he beats you that way, that's fine. You don't want to let him run up in the field. They run for 200-300 yards. You can totally forget this game. Any slight chance you might have would be gone.
Yeah, you look at them. You could look at the advanced metrics. You could just look at the NCAA numbers. But you see a lot of statistics within the top 20. I'm looking at it right now. 11th, 22, 6th, 19th. I mean, a lot of numbers that suggest they do a lot of things exceptionally well in terms of adjusted and efficiency and all of those things that they do. And they also play really, really hard. I mean, one thing that stands out when you watch Clemson on both sides of the ball is they clearly love their coaching staff and each other. They play really hard every week, and it's something that needs to be pointed out because I don't think we always see it here right now, and that's part of the frustration as well. Now let's look at this Clemson defense where you wonder, frankly, we could look at all the numbers, but here's the deal that I'll bring up first of all, and Coach Fisher's going to talk about this defense in a second, but I have to say, how does Florida State run the football against this defense? How does this offensive line find a way to run the ball against that defensive line? And if you cannot do that, what does that set your true freshman quarterback up for? A nightmare state. Here's Jimbo Fisher talking about Clemson's defense.
Jimbo, Clemson's pass rush, their sack numbers are obviously really impressive.
33 sacks.
How do they, is it mostly the front four, or do they bring pressure from
They bring pressure, but they're front four. A lot of us are front four. I mean, they got great inside push guys. Wilkins and Lawrence are both excellent. Wilkins go in and out. Farrell and Bryant and all those guys are all natural pass rushers. They're really good guys. Will be high draft pick guys, and then they bring pressure with it. So it's a mixture.
Jimbo Fisher discussing Clemson's defense. Ira, let's compare this defense to the previous Clemson defenses. And certainly, if you think about the successes they've had there, it really starts on that defensive line. There's talent everywhere.
It's really remarkable the way they've reloaded defensively. I thought, the last time they had to reload, I thought there would be a big drop-off, and it hasn't happened. And that's, again, speaks to your 45-4 record in their last 49 games. Statistically, they do a great job overall. They do a great job situationally. They keep teams out of the end zone. I think in home games they're giving up like 8 points a game, which is unbelievable. But it's not like their numbers jump off the charts in terms of turnovers. Their sack numbers obviously are really impressive. They have 33 sacks. They get after the quarterback, 11 of them.
Have it great, Ira. Have it great is very, very good for Clemson. You know I like to use that. Yeah, go ahead.
But they... But I think the big thing is they don't make a lot of mistakes. They don't give a lot of points. They play well situationally. And like you said, they play hard and they feed off of each other. That team plays as a team. And that's one of the real, I think, strong points.
Well, Gene, I don't envy you. Go ahead and tell us how this offensive line is going to block that defensive line, or just go ahead and admit that won't happen.
I hate to be a negative Nelly here. It's just everything I'm talking about is really bad. But I've been doing this for a while, at least 20 years, talking about the matchups FSU played. Easily, when you go by an individual position matchup, this is the most lopsided I've ever seen against FSU, and it's not even close. It's just everything you look at is horrific. Let's start out statistically. Clemson is number 2 in the country in sacks. Florida State, number 120 at giving up sacks. Clemson, number 5 in tackles for loss. FSU, 126 in giving up tackles for loss. And then let's go look at some of the talent. Ridiculous. Look ahead to some of the mock drafts going ahead in 2018. It's got Clemson front 7 all over the place. One of the mock drafts, they just look at 5 of the front 7 are in the first round. Okay, so you said, well, the other 2 guys must be chopped liver. No, one of them is Dexter Lawrence, who is the number 1 defensive tackle in the country a couple of years ago. He's going to be a first-round pick next year. And your other one left over, the one lone linebacker is a sophomore. He's only a lowly 5-star. So, I mean, this is the best. They're playing basically an NFL defensive front. And let's make it even worse. We don't know the status of Derek Kelly. Jimbo Fisher wouldn't answer that. He was hurt during the Syracuse game. Josh Ball has some legal issues. There's some allegations. I don't know what's going to happen there. And even at the end of the game, I saw your center, Eberle, had his ankle wrapped. So who knows what kind of state this offensive line is going to be in. It is a really ugly matchup for Florida State. I don't know if you can put your quarterback back in this one. I think you just kind of run a lot and hope Cam Akers can break a couple like he did last week.
You successfully got me more depressed than I was prior to this. I didn't think it was possible, but you successfully laid out the many reasons that this is going to be a bloodbath. All right, when we come back, an opportunity to review the segments and who's lived up to preseason expectations and who hasn't. I think you got a good guess as to where we're going with this. And then also, of course, keys to the game and our picks. That's next on the Warchant.com report. Welcome back to the Warchant.com report, and as always, don't forget to the Warchant.com game day page. If I could say it, that would be easier to find that complete list of game watching. I don't know how many of you want to go and meet your friends out to watch the big game, but if you do and you're wondering where that's going to happen, go to the Warchant.com game day page. Easier for somebody else to say. All right, which if any, of the segments on this football team has lived up to the preseason expectations? And I guess give me one that's underachieved the most.
If anybody's lived up, I'm going to go with the running backs. I think that group has played pretty well, especially Jacques Patrick goes down. I think he's been better than people thought before he went down with his injury. He expects to be back this week against Clemson. He's been practicing, and obviously Cam Akers has lived up to the billing. He's got a chance to maybe reset Dalvin Cook's freshman rushing record. So that would be my one group that's achieved what we maybe hoped that they could achieve. The biggest disappointments to me is the secondary. This was a defense that was supposed to be a dominant defense, and really you can make a case the defensive line has been about not too far below what you expected. Linebackers, I don't think anybody expected that to be a great group. That secondary, with all the guys that have played so much, and then bringing Derwin James back from injury, should have been one of the best secondaries in the country, and it just has not lived up to it. We saw that right in front of our eyes, even in the win against Syracuse, where they couldn't get off the field.
Profoundly disappointing. Your groups, your segments.
Well, I would say if I can narrow it down to defensive tackles, I think they've been outstanding this year. I mean, Noddy and Christmas are giving it all. They're playing extremely well. I mean, I think both of those guys are in the top 6 in tackles. When your defensive tackles are up there doing that, getting into it, I'm all for those guys. I think they've been outstanding right now. Obviously, I agree with Ira 100% on the secondary. You got 2 guys that are first rounders. Every mock draft you look at, all that experience back there, they rank 117th in interceptions. And I don't know if you got some advanced metric, Jeff, to look at there, but in terms of giving up third and longs, I mean, how many little pass plays have gone for 9, 10, 11 yards whenever they need that against that secondary over and over and over again? And let's not forget the meltdowns at the end of games, the Miami game, everything else that secondary has done. So a huge disappointment on that side of the ball.
Yeah, and I'll say this, if we're looking for the disappointment in successes, I agree with Ira on running back. I've really enjoyed watching them play. I think they're set there for a long time coming. But, you can't continue to ignore the offensive line, which is just terrible and wildly inconsistent in Rick Trickett's time. He's had some good years, despite what fans will note. But we thought coming into the season that, okay, if they just are average, then you got a chance. Now, we couldn't have known DeAndre Francois was going to get hurt and Landon Dickerson was going to go down, and that's really been disappointing. But, for a program of this stature, and to have recruited as well as they have, top 5 recruiting classes year in and year out, and to have situations where just a few years ago they brought in this huge class that everybody got so excited about on the offensive line, and we thought this is going to be the game changer. It's now assumed at Florida State that you're going to get your quarterback killed. It's now assumed that you better have a pretty transcendent and special running back to be able to make guys miss in the backfield routinely to generate something. It's now assumed that there will be no level of consistency from that group ever, year in and year out. It's just profoundly disappointing that could still be the case at Florida State. So that, to me, is a group, again, along with the defensive backs, that have been the most disappointing. Let's get to some keys to victory. I'm going to give you one right off the bat, and Gene, you guys can go on into it. I'm just going to tell you, the only way Florida State wins the game is if Clemson helps them. Clemson's going to have to turn the football over. They're going to have to give up a big special teams play. They're going to have to help Florida State out. And in particular, they're going to have to give Florida State the lead early so that the Noles believe that they can compete and maybe play a little over their heads and have a chance to be in this thing in the second half, and maybe some game pressure shifts to Clemson and they begin to feel a little nervous about not taking care of business here. Other than that, I don't know how it happens. Your keys.
Well, I think, first of all, you got to weather an early storm, because we know, let's say Clemson goes up 14-0 in the first quarter. They're going to pack it in. It's done. But your hope is you keep it close. They get in the second half. Clemson gets a little nervous, and you got a chance to maybe get that big turnover, big play. You do it. I think when you get in the red zone, you better convert, because you're not going to score many points against Clemson. You get inside that 20-yard line. Do not be setting up for field goals. You better get a touchdown there. And then finally, don't get Blackman killed. Get him through this game. Let him, do what you can to protect him, like you were mentioning. Either roll him out, run a lot, do a lot of plays where you don't expose him to getting destroyed by this great defensive front.
Yeah, a lot of play action, a lot of move in the pocket.
Yeah, I was thinking back to the Boston College game when we got to this segment, and you guys asked me for my keys to the game, and I really couldn't think of anything, and that's where I am again. I really, other than turnover luck, a busted play on special teams where DJ Matthews returns a punt, something crazy happens, and Clemson just plays an awful football game, but you can't predict that. That's not a key to victory, but that's the only way I see it happening. I just think Florida State, as Gene and you have pointed out so many times, they match up terribly with this team. It's not a situation where maybe they're not as good a team, but there's something they can exploit. I just don't think they match up well, and they're so bad defensively. I think we have a chance to see how bad defensively they are in this game. I just don't see any scenario where Florida State can win, other than Clemson just completely plays their worst game in years.
Wow.
You're going to need them to for this to not get real ugly. When that line came out, we were all stunned by the margin, maybe just not in the fact that it was almost 3 touchdowns, but just that's the status of the two programs. That's your divisional rival whom you lorded over as recently as just a few years ago, and now they've lapped you, and you're expected to go in there and be lambs led to slaughter. That's unbelievable. It's now time for our weekly picks. By the way, not a good day for us, gentlemen. The gambling odds caught up to us last week. We were all under 500. I was the worst of the bunch at 2-5. That's just not getting it done. Let's try again. Virginia Tech -3 at Georgia Tech.
Can I take Tech?
Yes.
Yeah, I will win that one. You worry a little bit about the Hokies are a much better team, better coach, but you hope, are they going to have the hangover against really getting blown out against Miami? We didn't see that coming, which really was their whole season to win that Coastal. They needed that game. I'm going to go with Tech on this. I'm hoping they're going to bounce back from this. Oh, yeah, Vatech. Sorry, I'm going with the Hokies. Let's do it that way.
I will, too, and not because I'm real confident in them right now, but Georgia Tech just lost to Virginia, so they're not exactly playing good football either. I'll take Vatech.
Yeah, but I'm going to go ahead and take Georgia Tech.
You're wrong, Ira, so we're going to move on.
I'm going to take my Paul Johnson and my yellow jacket.
All right. Florida is at South Carolina. South Carolina's given 7.5. South Carolina will blow Florida out.
I'm with you 100%.
How is that line only?
I don't know. I guess they didn't see the Missouri game.
Yeah, no.
South Carolina. Michigan State's at Ohio State. Tough game here, and that's a big number. 15 points for Ohio State, who just got their doors blown off by Iowa. Their season is now off the rails. A humiliating loss for Urban Meyer. Do they step up? Michigan State just beat Penn State and feeling really good about themselves. I don't like the 15 points. Give me Michigan State getting 15.
I'm with you. That's too much. If it was under 14, maybe I'd take the Buckeyes, but that's a big number. Go ahead and give me
Spartans.
All right, got the Spartans here. My Sooners showed up and won Bedlam. I was happy about that. I did get that right last week against Oklahoma State with Oklahoma.
You did. I think here you picked Oklahoma State.
On my show, I did.
Okay.
I took Oklahoma. See, I got time as the week goes on. I figured it out. I even texted Ryan Kelly, letting him know I was taking Oklahoma. But I'm not taking Oklahoma here. Really? Give me TCU getting 7 points.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'll take the better defense.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. It's at Oklahoma. They're riding high. I'm going to give me the Sooners.
Okay. Well, I hope you're right. Georgia's given 2.5 to Auburn. I like Georgia on the Plains to get the win, and they'll win by more than a field goal. Closer game than a lot of people might be anticipating given these two teams' records, but I'll take Georgia and give the 2.5.
Yeah, that's not many points. Georgia's a better team.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Georgia wins it.
Notre Dame giving 3 at Miami, and this game has a lure to it, if you will. Harkens back, ugly rivalry of yesteryear. Notre Dame's been a much better football team this year than Miami, despite Miami's record. But there is some magic going on right now down in Coral Gables, and so I worry about it catching up to the Fighting Irish. But I'll take Notre Dame to win this game by a touchdown. I'll give the 3.
When in doubt, you go with the better team. Like you said, they're a better all-around team than Miami. So in a close line like that, I know it's at Miami. They're riding high after the Virginia Tech game, but I think the Irish win this one.
No, sir. The U's got female fans attacking cops in the stands. I mean, this is vintage.
Wow.
University of Miami, the gold chains.
They're back. Yeah, you got to go.
Back. I'm taking the kids. Seriously, I've been fading them for a while. I did not think they were for real. Even when we saw them here in Tallahassee, I did not think they were a great football team. But at this point, I'm not going against them anymore. I'm going.
Well, they did just play their best game,
and they believe.
Yeah, they believe, and they did just play their best game. And if you survive a bunch of narrow wins, you should have lost to Florida State, should have lost to Georgia Tech, could have easily lost to North Carolina. We've seen all these. Syracuse could have beat them. Syracuse turned the ball over 4 times, and it's a 3-point game in the fourth quarter. So they survived all of those moments, and now they believe, and they're playing really well. So I understand it. All right, here's the ugly one. Clemson is giving now just 16.5. This dips below 17 against Florida State. It doesn't matter. I'll take Clemson to win this game 34-10.
Jeff, when it came out at 17.5, I was really thinking about taking Florida State just because that little hook on there, and I could kind of see this maybe being close, but at 16, it's a no-brainer. You absolutely have to go with Clemson here.
I think Florida State gets shut out. I think Florida State is going to have a hard time getting, other than a special team score, I just don't see it happen. I think Clemson's going to win about 38-0. I mean, I just don't see Florida State scoring.
That's not a crazy pick, and that's what's sad, is you saying Florida State's going to lose 38-0 should shock nobody. For Gene Williams and Ira Schoffel, I'm Jeff Cameron. Good job, Ryan Kelly. And to all of you who watch, thank you so much. We'll talk to you next time on the Warchant.com Report.